that I've come here with good and not so good news.
मेरे बाल नहीं सफ़ेद होते हैं, किसी और के होते हैं. I'm कह you realize मेरे हो चुके हैं.
And then at 60, if you're an employee, there's a hard stop. Hard stop from life as you know it, from your relevancy in the society you're living with.
You have no standing, no relevance.
No authoritative control over the environment.
My worst fears are being dependent on someone.
यार मेरे खर्चे के लिए मैं किसी और से रुका रहा हूँ. वो is worse than help for me.
आज की दुनिया में तो having a stable job is risky. Just because somebody gives you a paycheck on a certain date doesn't mean that there is no risk.
And as an actor, you're risking your face, your name, your dignity, everything, trying to become an actor, and hopefully you'll make it through. If not, you get embarrassed and you get thrown out.
India, at least, if I were to, parents fought for survival. We have probably been in a generation where we are not looking for survival, but we're looking for quality of life.
And the rules are constantly changing, and I mean in a dramatic way.
Hey, Maddy, it's been what, 8-9 महीने हो गए? I think we met about 8 months ago.
Yeah. Correct.
First time in Chennai, right? We met in Delhi.
I'm sorry to drag you down to Chennai.
क्या कर रहे हो आप यहाँ चेन्नई?
तो यार मैं यहाँ पे I'm going to be here for the next 2.5 months. यहाँ पे मेरी एक shooting चल रही for a series called Legacy, which I'm very excited about, and I'm playing a very age-appropriate role. So this is to look for it.
It's a lot more grayed out than I saw.
Well, this is the actual grace.
Yeah, I've always loved exploring these topics with you. But you had this independent streak, right? You met a bunch of people for a change, whether it was Radhika, who runs a large mutual fund business, some biohackers, some chartered accountants, divorce, bunch of these things. How were those conversations for you?
Individually, those conversations were very exciting, highly informative. They became very popular. People talked to me about for a change, for a change didn't register to me as something that I'm involved with. I was always involved with these interviews. So when I go to the airport and people say for a change is so good, and so I realized that it's actually touched a lot of people. But I think it was sporadic in terms of it was intense, it was correct, it was very informative. But we wanted to head towards something. We need to know where we are taking those conversations and what is the purpose of those enlightenments, And I thought that what we're doing right now, we're able to curate those conversations to a relevant and a very tangible outcome, which is in today's world, if you're going to live for 100 years, what are the things you need to do and how you need to plan that, which is why I thought this is a much more purpose-driven, much more directional approach than what For a Change was.
Yeah, I kept watching the podcast and the kind of business that I run, which is really about people planning for their risk, for their lives in some shape or form. What kept striking in those conversations to me was that these are aspects. We were taking one slice. How do you plan for sudden demise and financial issues around it? Or how do you plan for your health expenses? A bunch of these things. What does it mean when we put it all together? It really means how do you live a better, more fulfilling, longer, hopefully, longer life. And to get all these aspects right, there are a bunch of things that get involved. I see in close quarters, I see people coming to us for insurance when it's too late. In close quarters, I see people not being well planned. In close quarters, I've seen the government pushing for mental health disorders to be covered inside insurance because I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, but I'm emotionally not stable. So a lot of stuff goes into actually leading a fulfilling life.
Correct. Well, one of my activities that I enjoy is going and giving these talks at corporate events. They invite us with a lot of love. Sometimes they're also a little cheeky about how they've invited actors, and I've seen a couple of them saying, I hope Mr. Madhavan, you're ready for the speech and everything.
I thought they only call for pictures.
Yeah, no. They pay us for it as well. But so I can see that this gentleman was being rather condescending because, I hope you're prepared. Everybody wants to hear and all. And I thought, so let's give him something that he'll want to think about. And while giving him food for thought, I also got the fear of God put in me. Because I remember going in, seeing this whole executive sitting there and waiting eagerly to see what I had to talk about the film industry. But I said, I've come here with good and not so good news. And they were all like, and I could see this gentleman sitting right in front of me, looking at me with a smile. I said, the good news is that in today's world, with the advancement in medical science, God forbid you don't have an accident or you don't have a debauched lifestyle, they'll keep you alive till you're 90 at least. If you stay healthy and you take your walks and you add your right food, staying alive till 90 is not such a big deal anymore, or at least thereabouts, 90 to, 100 years, they keep blessing us with 100 years and stuff like that. But now it looks more of a reality. The not so good news is that the first 30 years of your life is properly charted. Your parents know when to send you to school, which school to send you, how much you have to study, what subject you have to study, when to give the exams, and then which college you need to go to, and then what kind of a job you need to apply to. And by the time you're 30, you're by and large taken one large leap of your life to stabilize yourself. Then comes the next 30 years where you build on what you've achieved so far, or what you started off, on the family front, on the professional front, on the work front, on the finance front. And then at 60, if you're an employee, there's a hard stop. Hard stop from life as you know it, from your relevancy in the society you're living, because if you're working in a corporate setup and you're living in that area, you have a lot of importance. You become the assistant general manager or general manager, and suddenly you're not that anymore.
You have no standing, no relevance.
No authoritative control over the environment like you have. One day you're a Saab, next day you're just a citizen. And then the next 30 years of your life is not charted.
There's no plan.
There's no plan because we are not taught to plan for the next 30 years. It is supposed to be retirement, and in most cases, retirement from life.
Yeah.
But that is not the case, right? Or do you want to be a part of your grandchildren's life? What have you done to invest in your retirement community in terms of not money, but making friends? I mean, how many people that are sitting around you would you like to have as neighbors who you can trust will take care of you if there's an emergency? Because when you're 35 and 40, when you plan what your future should be, is very different from when you look at it when you're 60. And suddenly you realize that the house that you built, you thought your son will move into, doesn't have any relevance.
Yeah.
He is in some other part of the world. So the commitment to the next 30 years is so vague, or the idea of the next 30 years is so vague, that I think, Varun, that can be the difference between heaven and hell in your life.
Before we talk about the next 30 years, where it could be challenging for all the reasons that you mentioned, I also don't think just purely, from the kind of lifestyles that we all of us lead, 45 onwards, where your career starts to slow down and your health starts to worsen, the first step is, what are we doing about our health? 90 तक, 100 तक किसी तरह जिंदा रहना है, गोली खा के जिंदा रहना है, or what is that health span that you're getting? More than will they stretch you till 90? I think today, like you rightly said, medical science will stretch you till 90. That kisi tarah is not
Which you said very correctly, कि the lifespan से ज़्यादा health span अच्छा होना चाहिए. If you spend all the time not creating an ecosystem that you're appreciated in, for example, the relevancy factor. Are you considered relevant in the society, or are they going to say, "Sala buddha sataya hua hai," and you have no contribution to make either to the society or family?
I'll take this somewhere else, right? I can say, like it's happened with me, right? आपको कभी नहीं लगता आप बुढ़े होने वाले हो? Correct. Like we always have this view that you're constantly going to be young.
Yeah.
There is more time. You can do this later. मेरे बाल नहीं सफेद होते हैं, किसी और के होते हैं, करें you realize मेरे हो चुके हैं. And I think life runs by.
मेरे दोस्तों को ही अंकल बुलाते, बच्चे मेरे को नहीं बुलाते. Suddenly you realize, your kids are, friends are calling you uncle, and then you go, oh.
And you don't pay enough attention to your lifestyle, to your health habits, to your financial planning, and suddenly it starts getting too late.
Correct.
But I don't think we're working towards saying, I need to sustain this body at 70 if I'm going to have this so-called 90 to 100-year life.
So let's talk about what are your worst fears as you grow older?
My worst fears are being dependent, on someone.
That would have been the first thing I would have said, and I can assure you,
Yeah.
that'll be the first thing that any person who's watching this podcast will say. Okay, physically, for my day-to-day functionality, I should not be dependent on anybody.
Yeah.
Monetarily, I should not be dependent on anybody. कि यार मेरे खर्चे के लिए मैं किसी और से रुका रहा हूँ, वो is worse than hell for me.
Yes.
loss of dignity and relevance.
Yeah.
ये कि अगर आप ऐसा सोसाइटी में हो जहाँ पे आपके होने से ना होने से फर्क नहीं पड़ रहा है, वो भी मेरे ख्याल से is hell for me, in my opinion, कि I should be able to contribute or I should not be part of it.
I can share openly. My father was suddenly out of sorts when he retired. You know, like just no plan. You know,
Correct.
Not having occupation during the day.
Correct.
Not knowing what to do with the 16, 17 waking hours.
Yeah.
Is a tough shift.
Oh, it's a big challenge.
It's a tough shift, right? Because you were the man of the house. You had respect in society. You had 20 people calling you 5 times a day. Iska kya karna hai, uska kya karna hai. Like you're a certain position, and suddenly it comes to an end, and not finding that, not finding an anchor, not finding a ground.
With him, yeah.
It's super tough.
And you said something very beautiful, and I resonated with it beautifully before we started the conversation, where you said that the only way to get rid of all your small issues is to find a higher purpose to serve.
Yeah.
Like, you have to find an interest or a hobby where you're ending up serving other people. This is not a philosophical statement. We're talking about a survival instinct, right?
Yes.
So your problem looks smaller when you start serving others.
Yes.
But the point is, we have to reach a space where you want to serve others, whereas your own survival is not at stake.
Yes.
It's very difficult to reach that stage of, and making your life comfortable because you're serving others when your own bread and butter is at stake or health is at stake, right?
Yeah.
So the dichotomy here is 60 is a new 45 in terms of health. I'm 55. Okay, at 60, I'm going to be doing stuff that my parents would never have imagined doing at 60.
वो तो retire हो गए.
Retire हो गए for physically. वो मैं तो अभी भागता हूँ तोड़ता हूँ मैं. I know I can do it and I still keep it up. Be it movies, be it dancing, whatever that we do. But financially, 45 is the new 30.
Yeah.
Because you're not stable by then.
Yeah.
Earlier on, you had a government job. pension आ रहा है. Or stipend आ रहा है या provident fund है. कि इतने life के अंदर जी लो, that is fine.
Yeah.
But now, when 40 is the new 60 in terms of financially,
Yeah.
and 60 is the new 45 in terms of health, that dichotomy is going to be something that people have to find new rules to start living within.
I say this with personal experience of having run a company and and a bunch of these things that happen to people in their careers. I think जो हमें safe लगता है कि मेरी job चल रही है, सब ठीक चल रहा है, and if you don't have that relevance going away quickly and you find yourself stranded. So what is actual security?
Yeah.
Whether it's the financial aspects of security or whether it's security in your career. I don't think people have, I think a lot of people, I wouldn't say everybody, I'm sure there are smart people out there, but a lot of people really haven't calibrated what is that security that they need. Whether it's financial, it's just practical planning of कितना पैसा चाहिए होगा अगर आपको 60 से 90 तक जीना है. I think practically, I don't think I'm that well planned. I can't give you a number.
No, it's not possible.
I can't give you a number, but do we at least have some calibrated sense? And second is, how do I look at if my career suddenly ends, or at 45, 50, people are starting to lose relevance. Maybe in the field that you are, there is always something that keeps happening. But in the corporate career, you could suddenly,
it's a hard stop.
It's like a dead wall.
Yeah.
And people are optimizing for that safety of मेरी नौकरी है, business करूँ नहीं करूँ, bunch of these things, assuming it's safe.
Correct.
I'm saying it's not safe because you could be fired overnight. We're seeing that all over the world. I don't think people are well planned in all these aspects. So first, taking care of your health so that you can survive any of these other pieces, which could be planning or just better living. Second,
Also insurance.
so that if you're out there suddenly stranded, you're not financially screwed, for lack of a better word.
Absolutely.
Planning for the money that you will need, and the purpose and the fearlessness, because that fearlessness is actually security. Because if you don't develop a second skill set, go out there and try something, if suddenly you get fired, you're done.
And, to anticipate what could be the right amount of money within which to live in has become so difficult right now. You're used to a certain lifestyle. And I've seen people who suddenly say, no, I can't afford a car. I don't need a car. Let me go. But the stigma of having to let go of your car at a stage looks like, acha, aapke ghar pe koi financial issue hai kya? Is how people are looking into it, And so people, especially people who are working in a place where their employment is based, And when they want to retire and go to another part of their gaon, hopefully closer to their relatives and friends and family, that settlement also takes a huge toll
Yeah.
on these guys, right? So the relevancy in that society, because they have to start from scratch, find out who's the local doctor, which is the local hospital, do I have your medical history, where can I go to buy groceries, which is the bank that I should be handling. So all that new change which is coming at 45, because at 45 your children are also not settled.
Yeah. They're somewhere in that mid space.
Yeah, at 60 your children were settled. You know कि भैया इससे ज़्यादा they are able to take care. At 45 at best your kids are at 20 or 22 or if you had
In today's day and age, maybe they're in 15 or 14.
15 or 14 because of the late. So you're responsible for their education, their health, their settling as well, or their marriage. So how is it possible to figure out what is really enough by the time you're 45?
I think it's like practically impossible to get a number of saying what would I need if I have to live to 80, 90 and also fund my kids' education or my retirement and maybe have a emergency pool in case like I lose my career or my job. But I think the most important thing to talk about is, have I started calibrating at least? Do I have a little bit of a plan?
I think this has been very enriching for me because when I ask you a question, I also have a introspective moment where I'm thinking, what is good enough wealth for me? And I think for me, emotionally, wealth would be if I have to get back to a one-bedroom apartment where I started my career with, getting anywhere below that would be a huge loss of wealth, in my opinion. If I'm capable of providing my next generation with a better lifestyle than I was blessed with my parents, and for them to be able to sustain it without much effort, I think that for me would be enough wealth for having done my job.
I personally believe a lot in creating some passive income, outside of what my day job provides me, which is wealth creation. I think all of us should strive for not income but for wealth. And wealth doesn't really mean being rich or obscenely rich. Wealth means that it's passive. It exists. Income is I have to do some activity to generate it. Wealth is that it exists and it pays me somehow.
Correct.
Now, whether it's my brand equity of Madhavan as an actor, who just his name sells, it's wealth. I don't have to do activity because I built my own brand. I built my own company, which is multiplying in value. Whether I go to work at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m., hopefully it continues to build value. But when you're constantly getting paid for your time, and as you're aging, and as people are getting kicked out faster and people want a younger workforce, differentiating between income and wealth, I don't feel people do a very good job. Wealth is something that will multiply. Income is something that I am always on the treadmill for.
Correct.
Now, how do you build wealth? Whether you have unique talents or you're an astute investor or you save enough to buy assets, even doing a regular job.
I'm going to ask you that one question that you said about risk. See, you're a first-generation entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
As I'm a first-generation actor. And the risks in this business are as
99 to 1. Yeah.
Yeah. You have the 99 to 1 is actually
The goods. Yeah, it's good odds.
Yeah, very good odds. For your and my career-wise, it's 1 in 1,000, if I may say so. How do you first handle the risk? How do you mitigate the risk? And more importantly, what is your approach towards handling risk?
I have a very different point of view on this. I think, all of us also sometimes underestimate and sometimes overestimate risk also, especially with careers and money. Let me say careers first. Let me not mix the two. I think we have a overestimation of what risk is. So I don't consider myself as somebody who's gone there and done something big and difficult and so on and so forth. I do believe that कोई भी होता, right time, right place, थोड़ा risk लेता, तो would have probably maybe in this field and some other field have could have been able to figure it out. I'll explain how I look at this piece. If you have had the opportunity to have a reasonable formal education, I'm not talking about maybe people who've not had the opportunity to do that, and you do know that आपको कोई नौकरी दे देगा, चाहे अच्छी होगी या बुरी होगी. Maybe your peers are your batchmates as you start climbing through life after college and so on and so forth. You're constantly, your issue is that your risk is falling behind peers. Your risk is not actual risk.
Understood.
Your falling behind peers is where your ego takes a hit.
Right.
But actually, when you financially calculate or you calculate what is the risk of what I am actually doing, मैंने 2 साल कुछ try किया, नहीं चला. That's the worst that can happen. नहीं चलेगा तो मुझे कहीं नौकरी लेनी पड़ेगी. और अगर मुझे वो नौकरी लेनी पड़ेगी, which is no problem, there's no lack of dignity in going for a job. The worst that can happen is I have to start 2 levels below where my peers could be.
Correct.
But I'm not on the road. It's not like I don't have food to eat.
Correct.
Maybe I don't have a 4-bedroom house or a 2-bedroom house. Maybe I have to live in a studio for a year till till I'm able to make stuff back again. But having that understanding that what is this risk? Is this risk that I'm on the roads? I don't have money to eat? Or is this risk about falling behind peers for 2, 3, 4 years?
Very nice.
I think a lot of us suffer from this overestimation of risk.
Correct.
And आज की दुनिया में तो having a stable job is risky. You see Microsoft, this, that, layoffs, AI.
Yeah.
I think there is, it's just because somebody gives you a paycheck on a certain date doesn't mean that there is no risk. So I think going for something that you like doing without a little bit of financial cover is what the risk is.
Correct.
But that risk is overestimated in my head if you break it down and you really say that, okay, what's the worst that can happen? I don't know how it is in your field.
No, absolutely. I mean, from your point of view, what you're saying is it doesn't matter whether you're 60 or 62.
Yeah.
When your net worth is accounted, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And if you hit it right,
Yeah.
and if you're at it, and I strongly believe that, so this is not my first company.
Correct.
ACKO is not my first company. It's frankly my third attempt at trying to do something. It's just that my third attempt became large enough, where impactful enough. It can still be larger and it's still impacting maybe a few people, but it can impact at large. Maybe it'll take more time.
Right.
But it's the third attempt. But in this third attempt, over these 10, 15 years, there were many times where I was behind my peers. Accepting that is actually what we are calling risk.
I think
I think it's an emotional misjudgment.
it's a notational risk.
It's not really true risk. So I think learning new things, putting yourself in a new career trajectory to learn new skills or trying something new or going completely out there or saying, hey, I'm from FMCG, I want to try financial services or I want to go to tech. उसमें मेरा promotion delay हो जाएगा is where our risk is. Our risk is not that actually, the fact that it could all go right if I put myself out there is where I think the overestimation happens. And the underestimation, if I can say, is that underestimation usually on the personal side, where we don't plan for anything going wrong in our lives. We don't plan for how much money we'll need. We don't plan. Underestimation is my body will keep working.
Correct.
The way it was working. So in fact, I believe completely differently. कि करियर साइड में हम बहुत ज़्यादा सोचते हैं और थोड़ा सा अगर आप रिस्क ले लो और आप रोड पे नहीं आने वाले हो, you maybe have to start a little smaller, but we underestimate risk on the personal
side. One of the risks that we perceived risk is the falling behind your peers, which in the film industry, once you made a name for yourself, is actually a clear and present challenge, right? So you keep thinking, oh, his net worth has gone up and his brand equity has gone up, and that's a risk. But most people don't realize that we have already crossed the biggest risk where venturing into a line like this has become your career and you've been able to sustain over a period of a decade. This job where there is 1 in a million who will probably make it to the position that you're in or even less. So the risk here is that depending on which department you're in as an actor, you're risking your face, your name, your dignity, everything, trying to become an actor, and hopefully you'll make it through. If not, you get embarrassed and you get thrown out. As a producer, you can put 40 crores or 100 crores or 200 crores, at the end of which you are left with only a disc in terms of an asset.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? I mean, there is no other liquidatable asset except a disc.
This piece of content.
Just a content that will either work or not work.
Yeah.
So that is wholesome, like an all-out risk. It's almost like a gamble. So in the film industry, when there's a 7 to 8% success rate, I don't think the legitimate word would be an industry, because it's full of risks, and you're...
It's a lottery business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. On the lottery bit, like when I talk to my peers or about taking risks, and there's somebody who put it, I forget who said that. A lot of us, if you're not born in the hungriest parts of sub-Saharan Africa, and you've had the chance at formal education, the chance of even a middle class lifestyle, it is truly in the world what is called an ovarian lottery.
Correct.
You've already won the lottery. So in India, at least, if I were to, parents fought for survival, both physical and financial survival. We have probably been in a generation where we are not looking for survival, but we're looking for quality of life, and quality of life is all these topics. And I'm quite excited. Next few months, hopefully we'll get in more guests who are much more smarter than you and me on some of these topics.
Absolutely.
And try and see what 100-year life looks like.
And the rules are constantly changing, and I mean in a dramatic way. I don't think it might be too preposterous to say that you and I will not be talking about a day when we're discussing how to settle down in Mars and populate it, because it looks like a
real life is possible.
It's real possible, right?
Yeah.
So it's all very exciting, and I hope to have far more interesting conversations with you again on this, Varun.
Looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah.